All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I was invited to talk a little bit about FORRT. FORRT stands for Framework for Open and Reproducible Research Training, which is an initiative that is very close to my heart and I'm very fond of. And especially as an early career scholar interested in open science, um, it's very close to my values as a scholar. So we're going to go in more details about what FORRT is, but very briefly, FORRT aims to raise awareness of the pedagogical implications of open and reproducible science in higher education. So basically what we're trying to do is advocate for the integration of open and reproducible science tenets into higher education. In other words, we're trying to complement the way that we teach and mentor in higher education with or informed by both the open science movement as well as the reproducible science movement, or that credible science movement, if you will. So in a series of relatively short presentations, it's my pleasure to introduce you to FORRT. What is our framework? We're going to talk about what are the principles of FORRT. We call it principled education. And the products of FORRT, such as our manuscripts, our pedagogies, and our educational NEXUS. There in particular, there's one product that I would like to highlight because we made a video on it. That is our self-assessment tool, which is intended as a learning tool for teachers and mentors to evaluate the degree to which their current teaching and mentoring communicate to students the tenets enshrined in both open science and reproducible science movements, which in our view is essential to the scientific enterprise, especially communicating students what are the processes of science, what science making entails. So now I want to talk a little bit about FORRT and ICA. And if you go at your call for papers, the conference theme is to strengthen and deepen the conversation about open science in the field of communication science. And I believe that's why we're also having this presentation here, because the open science movement indeed touches upon several aspects of communication scientists' research practices. And more importantly, it discusses the implication of these practices and sort of enables a larger conversation about how communication scientists and communication science itself can improve and benefit itself from this conversation. So now I wanted to say a few words about what is the role of FORRT at ICA. So we're going to present two workshops, and one is about revolutionizing pedagogy methods in communication science. And the second is how to do open science, a hands-on pre-registration. And you can find those in the program, and they are more or less about the same length. This is a little bit lengthier, but we hope you will like these workshops. All right. So I wanted to discuss a little bit about why of open science communication, and I think that the best way to go about it is to literally quote from the call for papers, and there it says that it's about sharing knowledge of our research process. It's about being upfront about our research ideas and what are they, and being transparent and thoughtful about analyzing our materials or data or other qualitative materials, all the while ensuring that data and instruments and methods, everything is available for future scholars to learn from and to challenge the knowledge we produce. So in my eyes, that is sort of a summary of the ICA theme, so sort of in a nutshell. So what open science is trying to do in many ways, and I believe that that is also enshrined there, is to see science as a public good. And this is a different view than that is sort of the status quo today. And we hope that this conversation will not only increase the quality of our research, but also the transparency with which we do research, and as well as making it more broadly available to people that are scientifically disenfranchised. And together we hope to build a better community of scholars, and that is more inclusive and diverse, and it has a broader appeal to it. So this is the goal. All right. So now I want to talk a little bit about a recent publication that make the rounds in the Journal of Communication, and it basically talks about 7 agenda topics, or open science agenda, and he made a nifty summary of 7 items that talk about why open science, why should we think about open science, why it is important to have this conversation. And the 7 items are very simple. There are many taxonomies for open science. There's FOSTERs, there is knowledge base, there are several. I'll try to include those later. But this is one that is really interesting. So the first item, published materials, data, and code, it relates to facilitating the reproduction of analysis and the replication of studies. And it also provides a source of knowledge creation, and it improves, or it aims to improve the incremental progresses of science. So if you think about it, also helps not only both teachers for sure and mentors for sure, to the extent that these materials can be used for education of grad students, for example. So the second topic is pre-registering and of studies. We made a workshop on this, and we hope it's useful. But basically, the point that we're trying to make there is that it has several benefits. We're just going to go through a few of those, but it reduces p-hacking, right? Because you're forced by analytical transparency. It provides a clear distinction between exploratory and confirmatory research. So you can't, basically, it means that it's super fine to do exploratory research, but you cannot pass exploratory research as if it was confirmatory. That's basically the difference. It also reduces harking, and harking stands for, it's an acronym that stands for hypothesizing after after results are known, which is basically you explore the data, and sometimes you hypothesize after knowing what the data is saying, right? This might be an unconscious process. Nobody's saying that this is on purpose, but this fall under this very large umbrella of questionable research practices. When you pre-register, you also have to do a study for the effects that you want to find, so it avoids underpowered studies. And it also reduces publication bias and file drawer, because with registered reports, it doesn't matter the results that you do find, the publication of your article is independent of the results, so this facilitates a lot. So the third, which is to conduct replication studies, basically it's the idea of building cumulative science, right? It's one of the, if not the major principle of science, is to accumulate knowledge and further our insight. So by doing replications, we can be sure that the foundations of our science rests on a solid base. So the fourth agenda is to collaborate. And if there's one thing that an early scholar can benefit, is from these collaboration projects. So I'll cite one in specific, but there are several. There are several associations that allow you to collaborate with scholars around the world. Just in case, I want to mention Psychological Science Accelerator, that is a very inclusive and dynamic organization, and as well as FORRT, that sort of is open to everyone who is interested on a given either topic or project that they are trying to replicate. But there is also GRADE. There's several others. PSRI in political science. There's one in economics. So there are several, and hopefully soon there will be one in communication too. All right. So the fifth is to foster open science skills, and that has to do with education as well. But it hopes to make it standard to make your science open. And normally, if you think about science or the way that you're taught science, there is a difference between the juris and de facto. The juris is usually when something is legal, or there are legal mandates for something to be done. There's regulations, but it de facto means that something is actually done. So in this sense, open science is the juris of science, right? We know that everything should be wide and in the open, but it's not the de facto state of science. So especially when it comes to graduate thesis, but also scientific output for sure, but everything that scientists produce should be in the open. So the sixth item has to do with the top guidelines. It's if not one of the most important open science initiatives, and it provides authors reputable, I'm sorry, that word is difficult, outlet for engaging in open science practices. And it also demonstrates for journals, open science, it demonstrates the great community your care for open science. It also allows editors to motivate and encourage and guide authors through implementing open science practices. So top guidelines has been one of the biggest or largest forces in implementation and dissemination of open science practices. Sometimes when I say open science, I also mean reproducible science. They are very enshrined on each other. So just I don't make a super big difference between them. There are obviously, but one leads to the other and vice versa. And some say that reproducible science sort of is enshrined in open scholarship or open science movement. All right, last item is incentivize open science practices, which is to implement long-term changes towards an open science culture, just make it the norm. So introduce experience with open science practices, including those that are at the educational level, so teaching our students and future consumers of science, but also as a criterion for job applicants, for tenure, for promotion, and definitely for funding. Right. So that is those are the 7 items in the agenda. So I hope the series of videos that we prepared for you are informative and help us all do better science, as well as communicate to our students a better picture of what science is and what it entails. So at our screen we see a sort of a very personal, idiosyncratic description of what science is. But I do find solace on this description because science can be a really daunting task. And it's important in my eyes to normalize the processes of this engagement with science. And in this way, I believe we break the glass ceiling in which students and general public see scientists as some sort of elite, intellectual elite, whereas we are just dealing with this on a regular basis, and that brings certainly some enlightenment, but we do have to deal with fragile epistemic foundation all the time, and there's many flaws within the way that we go about science. So I think this is particularly insightful, and I hope you like it. My last slide is just a goodbye, and thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity to be here, and I hope that you will enjoy the videos that follow. Thank you.